the world, people live in poverty. You will probably know what it feels like when you can't afford something you really want. But poverty isn't the same thing. Poverty is when people live without basic things they really need, like food, water, a place to live, or money to buy clothes, education, and healthcare. Without this, life is really hard. And there's poverty in every country, even rich ones, which doesn't seem very fair. Nobody wants poverty, so have you ever wondered why it happens?
The Philippines has a fairly high poverty. About 17 million Filipinos struggles now for their basic needs like foods and clothes. It is getting worse now because of the pandemic. It is difficult for others to find work, mostly in area of Tondo, Manila. There are many poor people there to eat every day. They look for leftover food on the road, and this is what keeps the beggars alive. They wash it before eating. They throw it away when it smells and stinks, and to be sold and made into a dish. This is the lowest community where people cannot afford to buy even one particular food.
Affect many peoples in different countries, and it implies more than a lack of income and productive resources. To ensure long-term survival, hunger and malnutrition restricted access to education and other basic service, social discrimination and marginalization, and lack of participation in decision makes are example of its expression. Overall, 1 in every 10 individual on the planet live below the international poverty level. That's 689 million individuals struggling to live to less people of or 26.2% of the world's population live on less than $1.25 per day. Poverty has always has devastating such as health, education, and mortality by several complications in many.
Inequality is complex, but at its root, it is caused by a mix of human and physical factors. Poor soil and mountainous locations, and landlocked areas with no access to portable resources such as water and food and other basic necessities, and the heightened vulnerability to natural disasters makes it difficult to live in these kinds of conditions for the human well-being. Add human factors like discrimination and corrupt leaders that bring war and conflict or sign on unfair trade rules with powerful countries and poor infrastructure that limits to education, clean water, and also health care. And these are the conditions which makes it harder for the human well-being to live in a comfortable life.
Many reasons why poverty happens. First is lack of education. We all know that jobs that offer high and nice salary is need education degree, and people who doesn't finish their educations is hard to find jobs that offers a high salary to provide their daily needs. And second is lack of opportunities. Even though they are hardworking enough, they still experience poverty because good opportunities is hard to find. And lastly is bad governance. For me, bad government leads into a poverty. If the government doesn't use the money of our country in a good way, poverty will occur, and those people who is already in a bad state will be more down or will experience
poverty has negative conditions such as substandard housing, lack of food, lack of access to healthcare, and unsafe neighborhoods, which negatively affect the youth in our country.
Solution to reduce poverty: develop and implement rapid sustainable economic growth policies and programs in areas such as health, education, nutrition, and sanitation, allowing the poor to participate and contribute to the growth. Invest in and implement agricultural programs to help poor people to have a decent job, create and improve access to jobs and income, and develop entrepreneurial talent. providing all people with access to basic social services including education, healthcare, adequate food, sanitation, shelter, and clean water. Empower people living in poverty by involving them in the development and implementation of plans and programs to reduce and alleviate poverty.
Community or country out of poverty, all groups must be involved in decision making, particularly when it comes to having a say in the things that determine your place in society.
Is it important to address poverty here in the Philippines? Poverty is supposed to increment in the Philippines due to the COVID emergency. It will prompt a diminishing in utilization development and further pay misfortunes. Hence, more noteworthy endeavors are essential to battle poverty in the Philippines amid the pandemic, which has hit the rain the hardest. Nowadays in our generation, poverty is still present. We cannot deny that poverty is still at the rate where people have misconceptions and lost opportunities to live in the past decades. That's why it is essential to combat this poverty. Now, I will give 4 principles to fight poverty. First is free access to education and healthcare, family weekly checkup, training, and job to lessen the unemployment and underemployment. Also, the economic improvement towards promoting social issues that will solve and ease in the future.
To the numerous people who rely on agriculture for a living and wealth distribution, millions of Filipinos are unable to buy basic essentials. The government has established a variety of programs and changes to address poverty, providing education, healthcare, and the society as a whole. People obtain fundamental skills and better career opportunities as a result of education, which can assist to reduce poverty in the Philippines. And for economic development, with the goal of destroying poverty through economic growth. The law sets a tax on imported rice with the purpose of promoting and maintaining local rice production for the population. However, the pandemic problem happened is projected to increase poverty here in the Philippines. This one will result in lower consumption growth and additionally income decrease. As a reason, more actions are necessary to address poverty in the Philippines in the face of the pandemic, which has negatively affected the poor.
Sustainable Development Goal 1, one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals established by the United Nations in 2015. Calls for the end of poverty in all forms everywhere by 2030. Eradicating poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice and the key to unlocking an enormous human potential. Its objectives include ensuring that the entire population, and especially the poorest and most vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources, access to basic services, property and land control, natural resources, and new technologies. Together, we can feed the hungry, wipe out disease, and give everyone in the world a chance to prosper and live a productive and rich life.
Together,
Together.
Together.
Together,
Together,
We
Together, we can end poverty.